All right, so I'm going to start by giving you a peek at the version of the game that is the most like Dungeon Drop. A little bit Dungeon Drop in space, but with some different twists. You might get a super quick preview of here. But you're going to see right away a couple of core elements that are right out of Dungeon Drop. So we've got our custom ship that's like the custom character, right? Kind of a custom ship that's built with 2 cards. I think Mero or somebody like her could have fun with these custom ship designs. But anyway, we have basically health and initiative, the rocket being kind of initiative, health being a shield, only a little different. It can move around in some different ways. This is the only really different thing. But the essential core element of Dungeon Drop, we enter a room, we take what's inside, is similar here in this model. So a sector, point of 3 stars. In between them, this is the stuff in the sector that I interact with when I jump into it. So I jump into it, I'm collecting these little goods. A little difference here is that they may go in my hold, which has some different implications there. But the monsters of Dungeon Drop could potentially become these factions, which do damage to different people depending on what you're allied with, which is something you could keep track of over here. I won't get into all that now, but it's a difference. And another thing is if I go into a sector that has a planet, go in here, this is full, I can visit the planet. And I the chests I know have bugged you. So this is something I targeted as something that we could really mess around with Drop Drive. That when this gets dropped in, that each planet would have a tiny little deck of 6 cards. So Blue Planet has a little 6-card deck. And whatever is rolled here, we get, Blue Planet number 3. And so we get this unique set of planets every time it gets dropped. So there'd be a little deck of green cards. So we've got Green Planet number 2, Blue Planet number 3. These have different things that happen when you go to this planet. This one could charge your shield back up, but they could move around the different factions in the galaxy, and then different prices sort of for exchanging your goods. So some differences, but you'll see right away, right? This is really just trying to put some new twists and spins on the Dungeon Drop model, which, hey, I mean, if it's successful, it looks like we're doing well so far. There is a part of me that thinks it's really practical to just not totally reinvent the wheel here. This is the most outside of the box one, and it's sort of the one that I've been showing you little glimpses of in those pictures I sent you earlier. But this is a model with potentially no ship cards at all, and most notably no stars or pillars or any of that, just free-form tabletop. Instead, we've got a fixed point, our ship, and we are burning through a kind of fuel to move throughout this tabletop space. So it's different, and that's cool. This is the basic way it would work right now, is that to move around, we'd have some sort of measure. I fooled around with a bunch of these. My current model is one that you can see as it goes up, the marks get wider and wider apart. So the more fuel that I burn, the farther I go. That kind of scales up. All right, so let's see. Here's a good example, right? So I could burn 1 fuel to go here. 2 would get me all the way to there. But if I were to burn 4 fuel, I could make a huge jump out there. In early playtesting, people were running out of fuel and getting stuck, and the game was over and it was broken and terrible. So one thing I did play around with was giving everyone kind of like a fusion drive that gave you like 2 fuel every turn or something like that. So that, and then you had spare fuel that you could use to go longer distances. I will say This model requires the most work for me because it's just plain not totally fun yet. When people burn through fuel too fast, it seems like they have some turns where they do stuff like, I'm going to go there, and they don't do much of anything else, which compared to Dungeon Drop, where you're always collecting a room and getting stuff, there's a fun factor that needs to be amped up. Sometimes you can put together something cool, which feels good. Another thing I'm messing around with is a card-based system for this, so that I could play this card and go a long way in one direction. I can burn 4 fuel in one direction and go get something. Or I could play this card, which would say, I can burn 2 fuel, and then I gotta stop. I can go in a different direction and use 2 fuel, right? Or mess around with some of the stuff you had talked about where you can spin around planets. Like I could play this card, and if I was in a certain distance of a planet, I could take that string or whatever, and this card says I can go all the way around it. All right, whereas I could play like this card, and I can burn 2, go a distance of 2, and then if I'm close enough, I can go a half arc around a planet, right? Like halfway around it, as opposed to all the way. Just different combinations of basically physical movements I can take